what you seem to be saying so far is that the violations of the cessation of hostilities agreement that you've seen so far are all being committed by the government.
We would say that the vast majority of violations have been on the part of the regime.
Okay, and on Aleppo, you are concerned. Why? Because the Syrians and the Russians say that they're going after Nusra.
Well, again, what I think, what I at least tried to convey was that we're concerned, in particular because it's not, and you know, we've talked about this before. We understand it's a complex, fluid, however you want to put it, environment where there are groups that have signed on to the cessation, and there are other groups like Nusra and Daesh who are there as well, and they're not far apart, and they're not clearly delineated.
Do you think that the Russians and the Syrians have gone after groups that are covered by the ceasefire?
I'm not.
Or are they?
Yes, I think that I think both. I mean, I think they have gone after Nusra and Daesh in certain places. We've seen that, but they've also used the cessation of hostilities.
Can you be more specific? Which group are we talking about exactly? If it's not Nusra, which group is under the umbrella of cessation of hostilities that you said that it was a violation of the cessation of hostilities when the regime and the Syrian forces attacked?
I mean, those are the groups that had already been defined by
several groups in Aleppo. Which group are we talking about?
So really the only groups, well, largely speaking, the groups outside, it's almost easier to say it that way, outside the cessation of hostilities are Daesh and Nusra.
Yes, but
they did not sign on to that. They're not part of any proximity talks. They're not part of the HNC. They're not part of this political transition process.
The thing is, there is no only monolithic structure within the FSA as well. So, is it Ahrar or is it Northern the Storm Brigade? So it makes difference. And which group are we talking about will be more helpful?
Well, I don't have a full list in front of me. It's the list that was determined through meetings in Riyadh and through the Demistur's process as well.
Let me put it this way. Is there any group that the Russians and the Syrians are attacking that at the same time are working with the U.S.?
Is there any group that the Russians and the Syrians are attacking that are at the same time working?
Cooperating with the U.S., yeah.
How I would put it is that it's more a matter of if they are attacking those members of the Syrian opposition who have signed on to the cessation of hostilities, then those are violations of the cessation of hostility. Does that make sense? I mean, that's more how I'd put it rather than we're supporting. I mean, of course, we've been supporting different groups within the Syrian opposition insofar as, you know, helping them develop as a political structure, helping them, you know, develop their civil society structure, all those kinds of aspects. But for you to say that what groups, you know, it's easier for me to define it as we would have a problem with any violations against any member by another member of who signed up to the cessation of hostilities, because that's obviously endangering the cessation.
So if there's an offensive against Aleppo, that would be to target Jabhat al-Nusra, but obviously they are co-located in many locations with
and that's part of the Secretary's major point to make, which is that we need to do, and that's writ large, we need to do a better job of deconflicting and delineating.
On the ground on a daily basis, is it the responsibility of ceasefire observers to get out of the way when there's a fight between non-observers and the regime? Are they effectively shields for al-Nusra if they remain there, if you're not going to permit the Russians and the Syrians to attack them?
It's a fair question. I would defer to others who know the battlefield and the terrain better than I would, but it's a fair question that there's such a that there is an overlap there. Yeah, there is an overlap there. I mean, and that's a serious challenge.
The groups to obviously at the very least tolerating Nusra's presence.
Certainly. I mean, that's, yeah.
All right, so what's the consequence then of that?
Look, I mean, the consequences, we talked about this before, the consequences are that, you know, this whole process depends on a couple of things. One is the fact that the cessation of hostilities, the relative reduction in violence that the cessation of hostilities has brought for all sides, and that includes the regime. So this allows everyone to regroup and to pursue a political process. That all hinges on the fact that there's this cessation in place.
Yeah, but if there isn't if this ceasefire task force
But that's,
isn't prepared to call out violations that it sees and then
well,
impose some kind of consequence for those who are violating it.
but my point is, the
what's
consequences
point
are,
of it?
if this cessation falls apart, everybody pays a price for that, without a doubt, the regime included. And, you know, part of the structure, or part of the reason why this succeeded, God bless you, part of the reason this has succeeded thus far